Traditionally, the second anniversary gift is cotton. But when it comes time to marking the second anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, I think that condoms might be more apt. In fact, I fear you may need to stock up on them while you can, because last week, Senate Republicans allowed a vote protecting the right to contraception to fail. Welcome back to Choice Words. I'm Samantha Bee, and we are back for Season 2 right in time because I have some seriously time-sensitive choice words for those absolute asshats in Congress who are systematically trying to ban contraception and pave the way for people like Supreme Court Justice Thomas to overrule Griswold, a 1965 decision that protects contraception. What really stings? What really adds insult to injury? I mean, you think the people trying to ban contraception haven't ever benefited from it? Are you trying to tell me that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, who uses the literal app to stop him from watching porn, hasn't ever used something to stop him from having a baby? That guy's all about preventative measures. You think that Donald Trump is allowed to just raw dog it wherever he wants? Oh, no. He, more than anyone, needs to wrap that horrible thing up. And as always, it bears repeating. Birth control isn't just used to avoid unwanted pregnancy, because people have historically refused to study women's medical needs. Men have thousands of options to cure their penile issues, while women are left with one single pill like birth control to handle an array of medical issues like PCOS, endometriosis, migraines, acne. So when you ban contraception, you're not just limiting effective family planning, you're curtailing meaningful treatments that comprise much too much of women's health care. If cruelty is the point, then Republicans have always nailed it. Actually, that might be the only nailing it that is truly safe anymore. Luckily, my guest today is someone who brings me levity amidst my moments of rage. We are kicking off Season 2 with the incredible actor and comedian Nick Kroll. You know Nick from shows like The Kroll Show, Broadway's Oh Hello, and, of course, the smash hit Big Mouth. So take a listen and make good choices. Oh, look at you. It's a pleasure to see you.
I haven't seen you since we were in Austin, Texas.
We were in Austin, Texas, and we don't have to play this, but it was funny to be held hostage together at an event of unknown origin.
An unknown purpose and unknown consequence.
Unknown consequence, but for 3.5 hours of just being held hostage to an idea of maybe getting coverage by Variety again in the future.
I know. And then can't helping myself but to make fun of the event and all of those things.
Yeah.
Just can't help myself.
Oh my God. Well, okay. So thank you so much for saying yes to this. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you.
I was reviewing because we've met through the years. We've met at different things. I feel like the first time we ever met was maybe at an audition together. Do you remember that?
Yes. I want to say it was for some sort of soda. And and I think eventually it was I feel like it was Jim Gaffigan and someone else. It was
right.
I feel like the audition was will these minor celebrity comedians be someone you want soda from?
Will this enhance your experience of our aspartame and cola ingredients in some form? I think the answer was no.
No. Because as I remember it, it's a soda that no longer exists.
Of course. There are so many failed sodas, and we hardly knew ye. Hardly knew ye.
I know. And yet, if they had hired us, I don't know.
Who knows?
Who's to say?
Who knows?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? I want to say that one thing that I've never said to you before, and I need to say this, is that Wheels Ontario is just a seminal work that speaks to me on a level. It's almost like It's okay. Well, I guess I should if people are unfamiliar with
somehow people don't know this.
How could you? It is a parody of Degrassi, which I'm Canadian, so Degrassi is a part of my life.
Yes.
And Wheels Ontario spoke to me on such a deep, like on a DNA level. I just understood it so thoroughly, and I felt like maybe you just made it for me. And
that's how all of Canada feels. I feel, I genuinely, when I go to Canada, I feel like a level of warmth from the Canadian public and also Canadian writer, performer, comedians, actors. I think almost entirely because of Wheels Ontario.
Well, the character that you bring to life in Wheels Ontario feels very close to my heart, knowing that when I moved to the States, I would wear my backpack to red carpets. Like, that's literally who Canadians are. I'd be like, my PR team would be like, do you want us to hold your backpack when you do your photos? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sure,
oh, you mean
thanks.
my back satchel? Yeah, okay, you can hold
my back satchel. It's got my flats in it for after.
I hope there's some pasta salad at the after.
Oh my God. All right. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad this is like our inaugural. It's not inaugural, but it's like our season 2 big splashy start to the second season.
Who else would you come to? Who else would you come to?
You have to. If we couldn't get you, we wouldn't have a second season. So that's good for you to know and good
thrilling to hear.
So just a launch point for the show is that it is really about choice. And we'll talk about like choices that you've made through your career, but it means something different. It really means something different to everybody that we talk to. And it's always interesting to like find out how a guest approaches Are you good at making choices and big decisions in your life? Are you like in agony when you got to make a biggie?
No, I'm not in agony about it. For the most part, career-wise, I'm very good at, I'm pretty clear in making decisions.
Okay.
Like I want to do this. I don't want to do this. Or it reveals itself to be clear to me. What I am trying to get better at is like understanding myself. Like my birthday, for example, will be a month of like, I used to like throw a big party, but I don't think I'm that person anymore. And I don't frankly have the time to, you become like I have 2 children and a career, and like, you just don't have the time to be like I used to be like, oh, I'll throw together like a massive dance party and like I'll invite everyone I know, and I could do that. The time doesn't exist anymore. And what I'm struggling with is like genuinely asking myself, like, what do I want? What do I actually want? And like, who do I want there? And I struggle with that. I struggle with understanding and making certain choices of like, I think trying to understand who I am currently and then planning accordingly for who I believe I am.
Right. So you're not necessarily like, I'm very busy and I have 2 little kids. Let's celebrate me. Let's take a month. Just like shut it all down.
Yeah.
Everybody be calm. We're going to do...
We're going to do some major renovations to the life. We're going to shut it down. We're going to live elsewhere while we get ready for the birthday. No,
we live on a boat while we prepare. Yeah.
It's not, and I don't mean to say that I'm like this selfless character who cares only about the wellness of others, but I have real trouble zeroing in on like in situations like this, that it's a real pick 'em and choose 'em for me, of like zeroing in on what it is I genuinely want.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, do I want this year's birthday to be dinner with my family and 3 friends? Or do I want to bring everybody to a bar to Or do I want to like do nothing at all? Like, I get a little lost in those decisions currently.
Right. And I feel like society also tells you to want, like, when I think about Mother's Day, for example, society is like, it's your day. It's your day to just take the day off and go be somewhere away from your children. And I'm like, well, that's what?
You're like,
wait.
I think I like my children and I want to be around them.
Isn't that the point of the day that we had the wait, don't torpedo me into space. Are you trying to get rid of me?
It's just you alone at at a terrible nail salon being like, I'm told I should be getting a manicure. And I
I'm
hate how this
told,
feels.
yes, I'm told that this is delightful and this is pampering, and I feel so lonely. And I'm reading a People magazine. Were you always good at making career decisions for yourself? Were you always kind of definitive about what it was that you wanted, or did you?
I think for so long, like going back to that period of time when we were both auditioning for like
Yeah.
the new Squirt soda, it was something like that. I think I was good at that point at just wanting to work, and that's been the major thing. Is like I just have
Right.
always wanted to work, and I have been aware that there are certain steps inside of that. So it started like in commercials and all that shit because that was what was available to me in New York in the early 2000s, and then also concurrently working on the own stuff. I was always good at being like, here's what I'm interested in working on my own, and here's what's realistic and tangible to get
Right.
done. So it wasn't like I was like writing like script after script when I was like starting out. I was like,
Right.
can I make my own little things, or can I get someone to pay me to make my own little things that will be like, like building blocks for the larger things I want to make. I have genuinely always been pretty good about that, and focusing my energy on things that are tangible,
Right.
and not spinning my wheels on ideas that don't make sense.
Can I make an observation? That's just
Yeah.
that's just a very Canadian way to do things. That's pragmatism.
Yes. Do you feel that Canadians are more pragmatic than
I do. Yes.
How come? How so?
I don't know. I feel like because we all come from like Irish servants on some level, that we're all just like we're just like, the clean towels are for the guests and we use dirty rags. That's how we do it, and we're happy that way. Like we just it's just building blocks. It's like you'll dig out potatoes until you don't, you'll always be able to do that.
Until the potatoes are done, right? So whereas
Yeah.
the US, it's like there's a belief that everyone should be like top dog.
When you think back on the spectrum of your what is it? Can you think back to a choice that really just like changed everything for you? Maybe in even an unexpected way, like even something maybe relatively small, or something huge.
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think like a very clear choice was I came out here because like when you were in New York at the same time, but when I was in New York, I would been like doing like commercials and stuff, and then there was like, if you didn't book like The Daily Show or Saturday Night Live, there really wasn't much else. Like there was a lot of like I was on like doing like a lot of VH1 like green screen, like Best Week Ever. Like I had landed I was on television, but it was like not really very lucrative, and it was not very like necessarily very celebrated. But I was like working, I was making money and on TV and all that stuff. And then I decided to come out for a pilot season, like officially, like come to LA for like 2 or 3 months. I lived in the Oakwoods on Barham. The Oakwoods are where like a lot of child actors and Disney actors would live. And it was like
with the wall of headshots.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly. You go into like the little deli supermarket inside of this complex, and there was like a wall of like brooding 5-year-old boys aspiring to become like the next, like Jonathan Taylor Thomas many years before, but like that version of it. And I lived out here and just went to auditions and ended up booking this show Cavemen, which ultimately failed, but got me to LA and working in film and television. And so I think about that choice of like deciding to kind of like be like, I'm going to go for 3 months or 2 months to LA and really like do that. Okay, here's something that I, even before all of that was like, I had graduated, but John Mulaney was still in college, and we were doing these voices. We would do this like sort of thing that was sort of like a fake newsreel voice, like, from San Simeon, like that, like, like, Orson Welles and da 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 da. Like it was, and we would just do that to each other. Like, there's Jojo Bryson, heir to the Bryson clam sauce fortune. And we started doing that to each other. And so the choice I will say is that I was like, we're doing this bit together. Why don't we write it down? And why don't I begin the process of seeing if I can make this? And that was like a real, like, this thing that we are both laughing about together. Why don't we, if we can write this as a script in some form, then I can begin to chip away at it. And John was still in college, and we wrote it. And then I started the process of like making it. Like I had met a guy through friends who was like, at that point, you really needed someone who could shoot and edit. Like it wasn't
Right.
assumed that everyone could do it. There was like a short list of people in New York or LA that was like, this guy has his own camera and he will edit and knows how to make things look like old timey.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that
that
was
was,
like gold. That was
yes,
gold.
there was 4 of those people in New York and probably more in LA. But I started to just like, I wrote it and then we made it and slowly cast it and made it. And it was like, oh, this worked. Like I then had this thing that I could show. It was called Cavalcade of Personalities. And and it's very funny. And then that was sort of a calling card to like get
Yeah.
on other people's shows and show it to people. And I think so. It was I'll say that as like a small but very big choice, which was like, you know, taking this little idea and now putting it to paper and then committing to go make it.
Isn't that just the thing, though? It's like the most, in a way, it's the most unsexy comedy like advice in the world, but it's the most important thing, which is to just write it down and do it. You have to go do it.
Yeah, go chip away. It's such
Chip away.
it's such a,
Yeah.
and it's back to the Canadian pragmatism is simply a sack. Let's just call it a sack of potatoes. A sack of potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And the less, I would say, here's where I think I will pat Kroll show on the back for its Canadianness. To make poutine, of course, poutine, but like poutine is like, to me, entry level Canada. Like reference.
Yes.
You know what I
100%.
mean? Like,
Yep.
and then saying like you immediately to me reveal yourself as not deeply ensconced in Canadian culture if you're leaving it at poutine and I was in Toronto for another thing. This is a few years ago to do press, and I was on like a morning TV show.
Yeah.
And there was a magician there doing tricks. It was a sponsored content for Tim Hortons for new like a Choco Freeze Blast. And it was like, and it was a magician there to do like Choco Freeze Blast content on morning television.
Oh my God. Every Canadian who has left Canada on some level has done a Tim Hortons commercial. And mine really, I think, stood out. When they started having bagels at Tim Hortons, when they started rolling out their bagels. And so the commercial is just me looking down through the hole of a bagel, which is the most flattering angle
Like
that can
shoot
ever,
from below up
but
at
from
you.
below
Oh.
up through a bagel. So anyway, I hope that
They're
it
like-
was burned.
Yeah, like
That footage is not.
see your double chin through our extensive hold bagels.
We're not going to light your face. We're lighting the bagel. That's the beauty shot, okay? You're supposed to look bad.
We want to make sure that the bagel has light from above, so we're gonna light you from above and then shoot you from below. And so what we're saying is we want Nosferatu to be eating a bagel.
Achieved. Asked
Done
and
and done.
and done. Okay, so I want to talk about Big Mouth because, I mean, wow. Wait, this is the 8th and final season or 9th and final season?
It will be 8 in total, and that the 8th season will come out, and 8th and final season will come out in next year. Yeah, in 2025.
Okay, because what a goddamn show. It's
Thank you.
incredible. Oh, okay. If people who are listening to this have not watched Big Mouth, you have to. It's all about puberty. It's the most awkward time humanly possible. I think you must be as obsessed as I am about sex education and the lack thereof in this country. These children, adults are so unprepared for life. It's so dangerous to not have that kind of information. If you were designing a sex ed course in the US in the year of our Lord 2024, what would it be like? Or is that just Big Mouth? You made it. You did it.
I mean, I did my version. We did our version of it with Big Mouth, which was I don't think we knew up top when we first started making it that we were making a show that we thought would be funny for us to watch. It was me and a bunch of other like people in their 30s and 40s and 50s. Now, what we didn't realize, but we're so pleasantly surprised about, was that when the show came out, it was like, oh, kids and people who are going through puberty or have just gone through puberty are going to watch this show and be like be like, oh my God, you made a show for me. We didn't even fully realize that. And, in animation, it takes a long time. So you write and voice way ahead of time. So we had done 2 seasons before season 1 aired.
Okay.
And, but then we took that very seriously, that kids and people were watching the show, and that whatever the jokes we were making and the science that we were talking about added up and made sense and we were very conscious of the messaging, while simultaneously being unbelievably dirty.
Yes.
In doing it. But we also found that the more dirty we were, the more emotional we could be, and the more emotional we could be more dirty. And not only emotional, but also trying to tackle and talk about big, real things. Now, so Big Mouth really was, I definitely was my, whatever I was going to do for sex education. Ironically, my sister, Vanessa Kroll Bennett, is become a puberty expert and is actually designing curriculum for schools about sex education and puberty specifically. She and her partner, Dr. Karen Natterson, who's a PhD, a pediatrician doctor specializing in, she wrote the American Girl books many years ago, and has written a number of books. And they have literally been working together and was an advisor on Big Mouth for the science of it. They have now themselves are literally creating curriculum. So you should check out, they've got a great podcast called the Puberty Podcast. And they've written a book called This Is So Awkward, and they are doing curriculum for schools. So just as a cross
promotion, cross family
pollination promotion, puberty pollination promotion.
You guys, you own puberty now.
We own the space.
You own the space of puberty. Good for you.
Yes, thank you.
What made you want to tackle it? I guess what was the catalyst in your own life? What was the inspiration?
Honestly, going back to what we were talking about earlier of like what I think I have been good about in my career is clarity of choice. And Mark, Andrew Goldberg, who my best friend from growing up, who had then when I was doing the stuff I was doing, had gone and become a writer and producer for many years at Family Guy, and Mark Levin and Jen Flackett, who are writer-directors and had been working with Andrew for a long time. They came to me. We had just finished Kroll show. that would have been a better, or another thing to talk about, a choice I made was just like ending Kroll show after season 3. I was just exhausted. I was creatively and physically exhausted. And the choice to end it and start over, knowing when something was done and be like, put this to bed and like regenerate. What is the next thing? And not holding on too tight to something because I had it, and being like, what comes out of that? And what came out of that was Andrew, Mark, and Jen came to me and they were like, what about an animated show about you and based on you and Andrew going through puberty? And I was like, yes, that makes sense. Like that. Wow. I get that immediately. I understand that. The other thing that came out of that period of time where the soil was fallow, is that the right use of the term, fallow? I don't know.
I think so. Oh.
But that was me and John Mulaney deciding to start working on doing some version of what became the Oh Hello on Broadway. But it was sort of like having to clear the table and start over. Can be really scary, but I think ultimately really creatively generative.
You put together such an incredible cast and a room of writers and voice actors. What is that like for you? Do you enjoy being in charge? I guess, how much do you enjoy being in charge? Being in charge. It is fun, but also terrible at the same time. It's like it's a very different experience. How did you cope with that?
Well, again, I think it's about, I've almost always collaborated with people. But and I think it's partly out of both confidence and insecurity. Because I think it's like, on the confidence side, I'm like, yes, I know who's funny, and I think I can convince them to work with me, and that we can make something cool together. The insecurity is like, ooh, I don't know if I can do this on my own. I don't either know if I'm like funny enough or organized enough or whatever the insecurity of the day is. But I think in the case of Big Mouth, my Andrew and Mark and Jen we continue to work together, great partners, and they really have always complemented my skill sets tremendously. And then bringing in the writers and talent, so many of the people on the show were very old, dear friends or people that I had known. So like of the main cast, the original, it was like Melanie and I had known since college, and Fred Armisen and Maya Rudolph, I can't beg to say that I was like best friends with them, but I had known them socially for probably 10 years, and same with Jordan Peele. Jesse Klein and I started in New York doing like open mics together. Jenny Slate and I had met a few years into comedy when she had graduated college. And Jason Mantzoukas I had met at UCB and had been incredibly close with for many, many years. And then the extended cast, similarly, many of whom are people who are my friends. And then the writer's room, there was new people that I didn't know, but also writers like Joe Wengert and Gil Ozeri, who had been UCB guys who I'd known since my early, like my first days of, in level 1 and level 2 classes. So I think I have always been, frankly, good at finding out the funniest people in a room, whether it was an open mic or an improv class, and befriending them to make them work with me. Truly, I think from those early days until today. And people are thrilled. Some incredibly funny people are not always the most organized people, and so they're thrilled to have someone tell them that they show up here and do this thing, and then you go away, and then something will come out of it.
Right. Do you? So many of the things that you create are based on like things that are personal to you. What do you connect to the most? And do you ever are there areas of your life that you think that you will not explore comedically? Or are you just kind of like sitting on like parenting now and you're like, well, I'm going to create something about this, but just not right now?
I'm really struggling with that, frankly, and I don't know where you land. I mean, I don't think of you as a stand-up. No. So it's like, so, I mean, that's the thing is I've sort of always kind of straddled those two worlds of like sketch and kind of character stuff and then also stand up. And I really have been struggling with talking of whether I will, and to what extent we'll talk about my family and my personal life. Right. Because it's a weird thing as an artist. Like you've decided to do this thing, but the people in your life have not decided to, and like, should their lives be up for, and I don't know that I have found the answer, but I know that I'm not entirely comfortable revealing their lives. Is where I'm at right now, I think.
Yeah. I actually think it's really good to have that struggle, and it's really good to be, I appreciate that you're saying that, because I think being thoughtful about it is critical. Because they don't have a say in it when they're little kids. And you have to imagine that everything that you're saying about your kids, and I actually put it up to this lens because we have 3 kids. If I could project into the future and think, would they want to read this about themselves when they were 18?
Yeah.
Like because there's so much to say. There's so much you could say. It would be so relatable, but would they die 1,000 deaths?
Yes, and I think
exploited them, and I think
I think my instinct is I agree, and I wonder the same thing is there a world where it's like, well, I'm going to bring up something about my child, but really it's about myself and how I handled this. Like, there's a world where again, it's always hopefully I'm always being like, who am I making fun of here? Like, and if it's myself, then maybe there's a world where that works. I think the beauty of moving away from like stand up or something like podcasting, let's say, to like scripted film and television or internet, whatever content is, I think I'm trying to figure out in general in the things I make in that world, which is how do I take the essence of something that I know to be true based on something that's happening in my life or a relationship that I have or have had, that I can then use in in another space, like that isn't exactly me or my family or anything, but both to protect the integrity or the privacy of my family,
Right.
while also not being limited by the realities of my family or the true story of it. But I think why people are drawn to incredibly personal content is because they want a window into people, but also I think inside of the specificity, what I venture to in all the things I do is just be specific. And I think inside of specificity is universality. And so I think if I can find the thing that's like, all right, well, it's very specific to my life or something that I've witnessed or experienced with my family, can I take the essence of what that is and then bring it to something that isn't necessarily, kind of exposing something about my family or my life directly.
Right. Do you think that your kids are going to grow up thinking that animated shows are strictly for adults? You've really flipped that.
Well, have you found it with I've witnessed it with other people in our profession whose children are like, oh, the person they least think is funny is me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And 100%. I get it. It's a power dynamic where one, also they're just like, I have to fucking deal with you every day. You're not so funny. Yeah. You know what I mean? But also there are animated movies that I'm in that I've sort of told them I'm in, like I'm in the Sing movies. I'm this character Gunther. He talks like this. He's a German, sort of a European pig. And I will brag directly in that and saying like that character some kids lose their mind when they hear me do it. I showed it to my son and he requests the Bobby Cannavale, like the mean wolf character. Like he requests not me. He wants me to do an impression of Bobby Cannavale. That's what he wants from me, He'll be like, yes, do the mean wolf. And I'm like, hey, what's your problem, man? That's my Bobby Cannavale.
That's good, though. That's good. No, they don't. It's not the natural order. Your children are not supposed to. My son is here. He's almost 16. And if he even thought that I was talking about him for 1 second, he would come in and just shut the whole and unplug everything. But they do not think that we're funny at all. They would never. They have no concept that we have a life outside of them. And I actually think that that's good.
Yeah, I think so.
Are you good at being a famous person now? What was that transition?
It's been so nice and gradual for me. It really has been so consistently gradual that I have accommodated. It's been easy to transition inside of it. But I will say I've gotten better in that there was a period where I was very... because of certain interactions, not particular, just general kinds of interactions that were not that fun. I got more guarded, which you sort of have to be at times to protect yourself and your energy. But then in the last few years, I think after the pandemic, I'm like, wow, what a amazing thing that people know me or know my work and want to say hello and say thank you. And that's a beautiful thing, and so I'm trying to get better at sort of receiving that kind of that it's a weird thing that happens to me. That can be nice.
Right.
And then also if I do not like how I'm being approached, I can admonish.
Oh, okay.
Do you ever admonish as a Canadian?
No, I am physically unable to do that. And my children do an impression of me meeting people. It doesn't happen very often to me. I live in New York and no one gives, no one cares. Everyone is 100% over it in our neighborhood. No one cares. But I do have a kind of a standard, my body changes and I kind of, I get super antsy and, but I'm appreciative at the same time. I'm like, it's so nice. It's always a nice interaction. People care. They want to say hello. And then my children just laugh
eviscerate
at me.
You.
They eviscerate me. They eviscerate me because my genes are wrong and also because I react weirdly to outside people. And they do rock solid impression of me every time. And it's very searing and painful.
Yeah,
Mm.
my guys are they're too little to kind of understand what's going on. But I feel very confident that they
Oh,
will really be
they're
able to lay in.
they are when they fix their daggers on you. It's going to be so. They're the only people who will truly be able to hurt you.
I believe that. I believe that to be
Yes.
true. That makes perfect sense to me.
Do you watch comedy when you're working on comedy? Like, do you actually are you a consumer of comedy when you're making comedy now, or no?
I am not much. I used to
Mm-hmm.
be.
Mm-hmm.
I think like somewhat of like not wanting to know what exactly. Like I want to know what's
Right.
going on, but I also don't because I don't want my work to be affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just can't stop looking at the like what I would call the math of it. Like you just see the like, oh, okay, they're doing this like stand up or scripted
Right.
like movies and TV. You're like, oh, okay, I see how this is being constructed or whatever, and it's not fun. Like my wife before we met was a real comedy fan, like a real
Okay.
like loved stand up and stuff, and like I have slightly ruined it for her by kind of sort of like being like, oh well, this isn't he's falsely creating the idea that he's just come up with it, like that he's done this joke 100 times and now she's like, oh well, that takes away the fun of it. But then also I think she's now seen enough that she can be like, wow, that person is really amazing because she's now seen so much.
Right.
And she can sort of differentiate inside of it better. But the things I like more, like I found like Jury Duty very enjoyable.
Right.
Because
Right,
it was like prank show, real lifey show. I don't love prank stuff. I just inherently I can appreciate it, but like when you see Jury Duty, you're just like I could watch that as something outside of myself and just be able to enjoy it in a way that,
Right. So you've ruined comedy for your wife by teaching. Like it's like watching a magician's tricks. You're like, well, this is what it was just triplets the whole time.
Exactly.
And she's like, what?
Yeah, that's
God damn it.
Yeah, exactly. It's always triplets.
It's always triplets.
Power of threes. That's where the comedy and magic crosses over.
Truly.
Do you watch comedy?
No, not really. No.
Yeah.
It's not where I go because I think it's similar. I just kind of like
it's not
watching,
relaxing. Yeah.
It's not relaxing. I'm just trying to make I'm making the sausage at home. I'm kind of like, oh, I see. And this is we're supposed to believe that this is one continuous shot, but I see where this is cut.
Like, I see where the cut. Yeah,
I see the cuts. I see the cut points. That's good, but it's too. I think we're just kind of too analytical. There are times where I can throw myself into it, like a great comedy. Actually, I really did love your comedy special. Your most recent comedy special. Loved it.
Thank you.
So occasionally, I'll sit down and just kind of try to just let go and just try to let the jokes wash over me, and it works. And it's very transporting.
Totally.
Once it works.
When it totally, and it can happen. And there are certain things and people that I love to watch, and I'll watch whatever they do. But I think I'm inherently either I'm like I want to be super invested in someone making a really special piece of film or TV that I'm like, wow, I am like, if a new season of Fargo is out, I'm like, I just want to I can watch that with pure joy and interest.
Yes.
And I've gotten back, frankly, a little more into like sports in a way that I had moved away for many years because I think similarly, it is something that I can just like watch and disconnect from entirely and not like, and that's the other thing is I watch the math, but I'm also like my insecure or like envious brain is like, why didn't I get cast in that? Or why am I not writing that? Or why can't I make that? Like, which is not relaxing or fun in any way.
No, but when you watch like 1917, you're like, well, I'm not doing that.
I'm not doing that. But I know where the fucking cut points are, Mendez.
I know, yeah, I could see the cut points, but great job.
Yeah.
But great job.
Although I think I could play a 19-year-old Englishman.
Oh, I mean, unquestionably.
I don't think it's too late, right?
It's not too late for you. No.
Thank you.
Nick, it was such a pleasure talking to you. This was very joyful.
Delight.
I looked forward to this for a long time. I'm just happy you said yes. That was Nick Kroll, and I had no choice but to look up one thing. He wasn't sure if he used the term fallow correctly. Well, he did. It's traditionally used to describe farmland left idle for one or more growing seasons to let it rest and recuperate and regain nutrients. We should all be lying fallow for a while. Thanks for joining us. I'm Samantha Bee. See you next week for some more choice words. Thank you for listening to Choice Words, which was created by and is hosted by me. The show is produced by Svea Reinstein with editing and additional producing by Josh Richmond. We are distributed by Lemonada Media, and you can find me at RealSamB on Instagram and X. Follow Choice Words wherever you get your podcasts or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership.